This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. I was doing some research and I'm laughing before I tell you really what this is about because I can't get over this article I found from the New York Times. I was researching some cases in the Netherlands and the UK in regards to SRA, satanic ritual abuse, and the cover ups. Because pretty much every case you look up that involves satanic ritual abuse ends up being covered up. I mean, one guy might end up going to jail and then getting released, right? How many times have we seen that? We recently just did a video on the couple who, had a daycare center. And like I said, they use the daycare centers, they use all these things as a front, right? But this is an article from 1994, and it came up in doing research on this. And it is you read this when you're awake, and you're just like, this has got to be one of the dumbest articles you could ever possibly read, but this is how they work people over, right? So obviously, if you're new, and I don't want to be repetitive here about SRA, satanic ritual abuse, they created the satanic panic as a way to divert people and to mind control the masses because they instantly started waking up. Because once McMartin happened, and some of these other events happened at these preschools, and kids started reporting this stuff to their parents, and then they reported to the police, more and more parents became aware, so they started asking their children about it, and their children started coming forward and talking about it, and it created a craze right across America, a craze in a good way, because like I've said, the reason that I talk about this and emphasize parents tell their kids about this stuff, or, make sure your kids aren't afraid to tell you things, because trauma-based mind control prevents these children from ever expressing this. The common person just goes, oh, if the kid's getting molested, why isn't he telling his parents, or why isn't he doing this? Because the trauma, they don't do that. So they create, obviously, the satanic panic, right? And what they do is they just run article after article, and all the mainstream, all over the television, and you hear the Satanists still talking about it, and everyone's just like, oh, all these crazy Christians started going nuts because a couple kids made up a story, and, and there's thousands of cases, right? And when you read this article, I'm going to read it to you right now. I mean, tell me you're not shaking your head. It's called Proof Lacking for Ritual Abuse by Satanists. Even though this article gives you nothing but proof. Holy cannoli. Tales of satanic ritual abuse. And remember, this is 1994. Okay, it's 2018. I mean, and just think about how widespread this is now. And how kept secret this is. Tales of satanic ritual abuse with well-organized cults sacrificing animals and babies and engaging in sexual perversion and cannibalism is the stuff of tabloid television. So immediately discrediting this entire notion. Now, the first study of its actual prevalence based on information from district attorneys, social service workers, police officials, and psychotherapists suggests that these tales are usually just that, figments of imagination. So get ready for the statistics that I'm going to give you, and I'm not even going to edit that out. The statistics that I'm going to give you, that they give you in this article, and they say figments of imagination. It's incredible. Yeah, everyone's making it up. Although the survey found occasional cases of lone abusers who use ritualistic trappings, it found no substantiated reports of well-organized satanic rings of people who sexually abuse children. In a survey of more than 11,000 psychiatric and police workers throughout the country conducted for the National Center on Child Abuse and Neglect, researchers found that more than 12,000 accusations of group cult sexual abuse based on satanic ritual, but not one that investigators have been able to substantiate. So 12,000 accusations, and not one is credible in regards to the satanic ritual aspect. Out of 12,000. Think about that for 1 second. 12,000 kids who don't know each other. Remember, these aren't all kids in the same school. These aren't all kids texting each other on social media. These are kids, in the 80s and early 90s who had no way to interact with each other and say, oh, I'm going to make this up. They come forward and they say, out of 12,000 accusations, the organizers of the survey say, out of 12,000 accusations, not one that investigators have been able to substantiate. Then it goes on to say the organizers of the survey say it is the first authoritative national survey on the subject. Over the last decade, accusations of molesting by cults have been made in thousands of cases and in retrospective claims by adult patients in psychotherapy who say they were abused as children, combined with sensationalistic press coverage, these lawsuits and other reports have led many people to believe that there's a nationwide network of satanic groups preying on the young, which there is. But you see, you have to say, they're sensationalizing the press. The lawsuits are getting, it's unreal, right? So after scouring the country, we found no evidence for large-scale cults that sexually abuse children, said Dr. Gail Goodman. Probably likes those bagels. A psychologist at the University of California at Davis who directed the survey. Since the McMartin preschool case, there have been claims of ritualistic and sadistic child abuse in cases all over the country. And we've been concerned, said David Lloyd, director of the National Center on Child Abuse and Neglect. Yeah, we're all concerned. We're still concerned 20 years later. 94, what is that, 24 years ago? And forgive me if my math is off, but I'm ranting here. So since the McMartin preschool case, there have been claims of ritualistic and sadistic child abuse in all cases over the country, and they've been concerned. The survey was to see just how well-founded these concerns are, if these are just based on mistaken perception or there is some firm evidence. The survey included 6,910 psychiatrists, psychologists, and clinical social workers, and 4,655 district attorneys, police departments, and social service agencies. They reported 12,264 accusations of ritual abuse that they had investigated. The survey found that there was not a single case where there was clear corroborating evidence for the most common accusation, and there was a well-organized intergenerational satanic cult who sexually molested and tortured children in their homes or schools for years and committed a series of murders. So obviously you see how they word that to make it sound like everyone's a lunatic who's making these claims, right? So keep this in mind, right? 12,264 accusations. But Dr. Goodman said her group did find convincing evidence of lone perpetrators or couples who say they are involved with Satan or use the claim to intimidate victims. One of the best documented cases, reported by a district attorney in the South, involved 4 boys and a girl whose grandparents are accused of molesting them from age 4 into their early adolescence. The case came to light when the children refused to visit their grandparents. The grandparents had black robes, candles, and Christ on an inverted crucifix, and the children had chlamydia, a sexually transmitted disease, in their throats, which is just sickening. Okay, so they had chlamydia and STD in their throats, Dr. Goodman said, citing the district attorney's report. But the overall results show little or no support for the more extreme claims. He said, if there's anyone out there with solid evidence of satanic occult abuse of children, we would like to know about it. So let me get this straight. You got 12,264, whatever the number was, people who had come forward at this time. You couldn't find one shred of evidence to convict anyone, to say that anything was going on. Then you get this case where the children who are as young as 4 have chlamydia in their throats, who are around grandparents who have an upside-down crucifix, dressing up in robes, and doing whatever else. And you say there's not solid evidence of satanic cult abuse of children? You can't make this stuff up. This is the New York Times. Did anyone reread this after they wrote it? I mean, listen, all of these editors, they're all in bed with each other. You know, like I've said it a million times, for those of you who are aware of Bohemian Grove and the Bilderberg meetings, these secret meetings that they have, which aren't really secret anymore, because everybody does know the date. Everybody's like looking around. They're like, oh, is Beyonce going to be there? Oh, is Donald Trump or Obama going to be there? The main players at those events are editors. People who are doing the editing. That's why all the themes of the stories revolve around the same stuff. That's why every news outlet talks about, here's the things we're going to detail. Feminism, we're going to LGBT, fake news. These are all things, right? And they all talk about the same stuff. So obviously at this time, all the editors were told, hey, we got to clean up this mess from McMartin. We got to clean all this stuff up because it triggered all of these children to feel safe and comfortable to come forward. And you're telling me out of all these cases, not one was credible, even including one where the child had chlamydia. They talked about, what more evidence do you need? Upside down crucifix, not enough evidence for you, Sherlock Holmes? What's the first thing you're thinking if you walk into someone's house, they're wearing cloaks and there's an upside down cross. You gonna think they're a Satanist, or are you just gonna go in there and be like, oh, they're atheists, or they're just kind of weird people? Boy, I'll tell you. And we know what they're trying to do with the article, the way that they word it, but the fact that people can read this and they don't just stop and go, huh? That sounds pretty satanic to me. Children with chlamydia, children who told the police that their grandparents were doing this to them, finding an upside down cross and all this other stuff. It's not enough though, right? What more evidence would you like? I mean, we got to bring in the old woman from Murder, She Wrote to solve the case, officer? Boy. And that's why I tell you, these police officers, the Mason organization, they control the police. It's all controlled. And that's how nothing gets leaked. Remember, they take an oath, they swear to each other, they get each other's back. And this is how this stuff just continues to go on. The article continues to kind of just go on and it mentions, how it's being sensationalized in the television. The stuff I already covered. I don't need to read more and, be repetitive about it. But, I mean, boy, this is the stuff, folks. I mean, how they get away with this stuff when, anyone with common sense should be like, that sounds, pretty, but no one's suspicious of anything. It's like, how many cases need to be reported? I mean, just think about it. 100,000 people called, just say hypothetically tomorrow, 25,000 people called the police to report molestations. And they're going to come forward and say not one of those cases is valid. Why? Because they attacked satanic ritual abuse to it, or they spoke of rituals that involved, animal sacrifice and infant sacrifice, pedophilia, all this stuff. I mean, boy, talk about covering this stuff up, and they just don't stop. I don't understand how people don't find this stuff important. I'm going to continue to talk about it. Talk about some of these cases. People need to realize this stuff. It's a scary world. The world that you think we're living in is a mirage. They created the mirage. The reality of it is this horror fest that we live in, and the victims are children. And we have to keep praying for these kids everywhere, because it's just, you got adults here covering up, like the kids are all making it up. I mean, what's the benefit for these kids? I'm still waiting for an answer. Oh, the kids wanted $1 million lawsuit. The 5-year-old, it can comprehend what money is. Oh, they'll probably tell you a 5-year-old can now, because a 5-year-old can tell you what gender they are, apparently. And sooner or later, a 5-year-old's going to be a head of a CEO of a corporation, just so that they can tell us that a 5-year-old can sleep with a 60-year-old man. That's the nightmare we live in, folks. So New York Times, just absolute embarrassment of an article. Unbelievable. I thank you for listening to today's show. God bless all of you and your families.